Hey everybody, let's try to get my color right on here. Happy Tuesday. Whoa. Alright. Happy Tuesday. Update since yesterday. Last night, the House and Senate JCAB ran way late. JCAB, again, is the Joint Committee on Appropriations and Budget. They went... apparently there's some kind of system error, supposedly. I don't know if it's computer or what, but they didn't end up going into the JCAB meeting until 11 o'clock. It was rescheduled from 4 to 5 to 7 to 9 to 10:45, and actually didn't start till 11. And so, like many of you, in fact, I saw lots of folks on Twitter and Facebook, which was kind of exciting. Lots of folks stayed up late to watch and listen. Huge props to some of the local news stations who streamed it live, which was cool. There was a bunch of constituents up here as well, which is also pretty cool and unusual, since usually those late night things are not many folks up here. So they passed two bills were discussed in JCAB last night. One was a bill that and it passed, and it raised the gross production tax rate from 1% to 4% on just the wells that were drilled between July 1st of 2011 to July 1st of 2015. If that seems weird to you, you're not alone in that. Oh, this thing is terrible. I don't know what I'm doing today. Just wells that were drilled within a 4-year period a long time ago, it effectively raised the gross production tax. It didn't actually raise it. It just, it removed the incentive rate, or changed the incentive rate from 1% to 4%. The bill author would say that the rate is actually 7%. We just removed the incentive rate, which is like we fixed the glitch. If the rate's the rate. I mean, what they're paying is what they're paying, right? So anyway, it does generate revenue. There was debate last night and again today on the floor. So this bill passed JCAB last night, passed the House floor just maybe about an hour ago. And the debate both times centered on the fact that, one, according to the Constitution, the state Constitution, they're not allowed to hear any revenue-raising bills the last 5 days of session, which is right now, unless the governor calls for a special session, which she has not. She could call for one to be concurrent, but she hasn't. So they're not supposed to be hearing anything that raises revenue. And so this bill came up, and it's called and whatever the name is, it's like a budget and tax, or tax and revenue or something, but it says like an act like related to revenue and taxation in the title. And so the questions were, does this bill raise revenue? And the author said, no. And because it would be unconstitutional to raise revenue. And he's like, no, it doesn't raise revenue. But then when they ask, well, how much money is it going to bring in? It'll bring in a couple $100 million. But it's not a revenue-raising bill. No, it doesn't raise revenue. We're not raising revenue. We're just changing a rate. It's like this bill doesn't raise revenue. It just fiddles the numbers. This is a number fiddling bill. That's all it is. If it happens to raise several $100 million, that's just a coincidence. Which I'm going to try that defense against something else. So there's a big concern. So, two things. One, we desperately need money. We need way more than this bill does. The state desperately needs hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars, and this raises it's honestly only raises $97 million, I think. It only affects 11% of wells. So basically, out of all the wells in the state, it affects 1 out of 10 of them. It's 5,000 wells. They were all drilled years ago, and I read today the guy that wrote Drill Baby Drill, and I also found a Bloomberg article that both state that most wells, especially horizontal wells, half of all their production is in the first year, and basically they use about 70% of all their production occurs in the first 2 years, right? And then it drops off precipitously from there on out. And in subsequent years, it's pretty low, which is why they frack to try to boost it up. And anyway, the wells can go on for years and years, 50 years. They've got to do some stuff to help them produce more, but it's still pretty low. So tons of production the first year, a whole bunch second year, less. So these wells were drilled between 2011 and 2015, which means even the newest wells are like 2 years old, or almost 2 years old now. And by the time the bill goes into effect, they'll be 2 years old. And so we've already lost like a big chunk of the revenue. And I feel like there's not enough discussion about how much is being produced rather than the rate. Because, I mean, whether it's 4% or 5%, fine. But we would be way better off to have like 3% beginning year one than we would be to have 4% on year 5. Haven't quite done the numbers yet, but just back of the napkin, that seems like a better deal. Anyway, which is why, and that's a whole other discussion. So it affects 10%, 11% of wells that were drilled years ago, and raises it to 4%. So the newest ones, and then after that, after however many years, they go up to 7%, like the rest. So it'll only raise like $100 million, which is better than nothing, yes, but not near what we need. Also, the concern is it very likely could be unconstitutional, because by, I think, even like my son's estimate, this is a revenue raising bill. If it has revenue in the title and it actually raises revenue, it's a revenue raising bill. Likewise, I don't think they've heard it yet, but they're likely going to hear the cigarette tax bill, except they're not going to put it as a tax, because a tax would be a revenue raising bill. They're going to put it as a fee, because a fee doesn't raise revenue, it just adds a fee. And man, our state has tried to use these gimmicks and kind of like semantics in their legislation before, and has not worked out well. And we've spent millions of dollars on lawsuits. I'm afraid, regardless of the fact that we need the money, and that if it ends up that we pass a bill that raises $97 million, but we got to spend, I don't know, $10 million of that on the lawsuit to fight it. That may be a high estimate. I have no idea. But any money seems ridiculous. Like, it's counterintuitive. So there's a way we could have gone about this, and lots of ways we could have done about it, but it's not there. So I'm a little worried about that. OCPA even said they might sue, which is kind of funny. But they said they might sue on the constitutionality of some of these issues. And supposedly some other groups that will as well, or have threatened to. So that's fun. So we may be looking at some totally unnecessary lawsuits. Who knows what will happen with that. Also, these bills have to pass the Senate first. So there's still that. And if they pass the Senate, then it's got to go to the governor's desk, and she's got to decide to sign them or not. But the Senate's going to have to hear it like this afternoon, so the governor's got time. So we'll see. The other bill that did not get passed out of JCAB last night was a bill also not to raise revenue, but to cut spending, which would effectively raise revenue, but regardless. And that bill was the swag bill that would target, it aims to reduce all the swag that state agencies give away. First of all, personal point of order, swag is actually, I think it's an acronym. It stands for stuff we all get. Like when you go to a conference, you get a bag and you walk around and get all that stuff, so stuff we all get. So there was a lot of discussion, the bill authors saying, all these state agencies shouldn't have branded coffee mugs and whatever. People made lots of good questions about, on both sides of the aisle, of like, well, the suicide hotline has some like stress balls that have their phone number on there, and they target vets. And it's like a marketing tool, but it's also like a kind of a care tool, and that if all this kind of, where do you draw the line, and who determines what is unnecessary? And they just kept saying, well, if it's not like mission necessary, then we don't need it, which everyone agrees with. But I don't see, like, I've worked in state agencies in Oklahoma and Texas, and I've not hardly seen any swag, man. Like, if you go into any state office, they're not all rolling around with like Department of Rehabilitation Services coffee mugs and DHS pins. No, they've got like El Cheapo Bic pins and stuff. Also, some of that is used for legitimate marketing purposes, so that other people might know about it. So you may go to a conference and get a pin for the Department of Mental Health, and it's got a phone number on there, a hotline, and it does serve a purpose so that other resources can know about it, how to contact, like all that stuff has a purpose. So if we want people to use services, and maybe that's the deal, is they don't want to put it out there so that people don't utilize state services and thereby save money. I don't know. Regardless, the bill went down in flames. Like, it got beat pretty bad, which was not expected. I mean, it was a pretty serious. The JCAB, only like 5 people voted for it, and so that died off. So I don't know. That we need money. That seems like the wrong way to go about it. So we didn't get the money. Also, kind of saved some heartache on that because it was just kind of looked ridiculous. And my hunch is, if it had passed, and if it passed JCAB and passed the floor and passed the committee and floor in the Senate, and even signed in, it would have not saved much money, because there's just not, in all my years, I can't imagine there's $28 million in like promotional items being out there. I don't know. So that's kind of absurd. Anyway, so that didn't pass. So what we're looking at now is that the House passed this incentive rate change, the fiddle in the money bill. That's definitely not a revenue raising bill, except for it raises revenue, and it says it in the name. If it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's not a duck. It's just a bird that makes noise. That's what they're saying. So that seems funny, and it barely passed the House. It was like a 55-45, something like that. So I guess it goes to the Senate maybe this afternoon. Maybe the Senate JCAB will hear it. We'll find out. We're really down to the wire here. I mean, today's Tuesday. They got to be done by Friday. We've heard that they really just want to get done by Friday. They want to pretty much sign whatever comes up and get out of here by Friday, so they don't have to go to a special session. And again, like, no one wants to spend money on a special session. She could call a concurrent one. That would work. They could do it this week and maybe hear some other measures. Although apparently they're going to hear them anyway. So we'll see. We'll keep paying attention. My big concern, and me and some other folks have kind of done some, like, again, back of the napkin addition on what we think is going to pass, or what has passed already, because we're up to, I think she signed in maybe 69 million, and there's another 100 or 200 kind of floating around out there that may make it through to the governor's desk. So that would put us at, I don't know, 270 million maybe. And we need like $1 billion. And $1 billion is 1,000 million, right? So we've got, we'll say 270, and we need 1,000. So we got a long way to go. I don't know what's going to happen. They've kind of said, I think even maybe House Leader or House Floor Leader Eccles said that he expects that we'll get enough to hold core services harmless, and then everyone else will get a cut of like maybe 6-7%, which is super steep. If you look, State Senator David Holt just about 20 minutes ago posted on his Facebook lists a ton of services and how much they've been cut in the last 8 years. And so, I mean, some like emergency management's been cut like 57%. For a state that uses emergency management all the time, especially this time of year, it seems ridiculous that we're cutting more than half their budget. How is that helping? I don't know the line items or what happens, but I do know people that work at state agencies that have lost their jobs. I know folks that work at DHS that their job is to be a case manager to help people with AIDS get medication. And without them, they can't, because it's a federal program. They have to have a case manager to apply, and that department lost half their employees last year. Well, crap, if they get another cut, they can lose more people. That's just pushing people off of a service, and they're going to die. Like, they have to have those people there. So anyway, so we'll find out. The other deal about this revenue thing, the incentive money fiddle-in bill, is that it's pretty limited. It's pretty temporary. It only helps for a couple of years, and then it kind of loses its effectiveness, because all those rigs they were going to time out in 2019 anyway, and so now they'll just time out a little bit sooner. So that only helps for a couple of years. So again, we've just like kicked the can down the road, which means next year, second verse, same as the first, we'll be up here. They'll be up here having to make these same decisions on an election year, which politically seems like a terrible idea, but nevertheless, that's where they'll be. So it's super important that we all continue to stay engaged. If you have questions, If you're looking for data, now's the time. Start putting it out there. Ask some of the reporters on Twitter or Facebook that are up here all the time. They've got tons of resources. Ask us. Ask other organizations. If you're trying to find some specific data, Oklahoma Watch put out a list of how much money every legislator's campaign received from energy companies or the energy sector, which is pretty interesting, especially by percentage. As one might expect, the leaders of the House and Senate had some of the largest percentages. Not everyone received money from oil and gas. Some of them I was surprised that they didn't. But by and large, folks on both sides of the aisle get some money. The percentage, though, is pretty interesting on how much they received. So anyway, there's lots of resources out there. There's a lot of data that's continuing to push out all the time, and I really encourage you to look at that, find out. And as we approach the end of the legislative session, it doesn't mean that you can just tune out. Maybe take a break and cool off. That's certainly fine. But now's the time, and maybe it's even easier to get in contact with your legislator. So get their contact info, find out how to get in touch with them during the summer or during the fall, and invite them to coffee. Like, set up a time with a few of them to have coffee and or have lunch or something, like cookout on your street. Get your neighbors together. Everyone pull your grill out to the sidewalk, have a little cookout, meet your neighbors, and invite your legislator, and get a chance to talk to them, because they really care then, because it's voters in their district. And especially for House reps who will be running for re-election next year, now's the time for them to get out there and meet people. And you can start building these relationships and having these conversations about where you think, what your vision for the state is, and ask them what their vision is. Ask them where they see Oklahoma in 5 years, in 10 years, in 15 years. In 15 years, no one here will be in office, not in the offices they're in, not in the legislature, because they'll term out. And so they're laying the groundwork for even the next class. Think about it, in 15 years, like I said the other day, my son, who's 5 now, will be a voter and could, in 5 years, man, he could almost be in office. That's terrifying. For right now, I'm sure he'll be a great statesman. I'm going to raise him right and be a patriot. But think about that. Like, in 15 years, what is Oklahoma going to look like? Are we going to still be struggling? Are we going to still be beholden to just a few industries? Are we going to invest and diversify our portfolio as a state of our revenue? Are we going to really try to not just fill holes, but like build mountains? Are we going to try to get past just getting enough to get by? And are we going to invest in our state so that people, whether they live in Oklahoma City or Tulsa or Ardmore or Godibo or Watonga or Waurika or Antlers, anywhere, Veneta, like, these are all Oklahomans. These are our neighbors. These are our friends, our brothers and sisters, and everyone deserves a future that is bright and hopeful, and that can put them on the right track for life. And now's the time, whether it's this week or next month or whatever. These conversations matter. Making plans matters. Having dreams, having a vision. This stuff matters. Okay. All right, I'm starving. I'm going to go have lunch. If there's anything else, again, follow us on Twitter and Facebook. We'll try to update you. I'll try to put out an email later this week with kind of a summary, and we'll go from there. Thanks for all you do. Also, keep calling. They're still taking votes. Keep calling. Keep writing letters and emails. Let them know what's up. Start those conversations now. Say, hey, what's your vision for the future? Where can we meet up in June to have coffee and talk about this? One last thing. As a reminder, mark your calendars. June 29th, Thursday, June 29th. That evening, we will be at the Wheeler Ferris Wheel here in Oklahoma City for a West Wing watch party. If you are a big West Wing fan, as am I, and many of you are, we're going to just kind of hang out. It's not going to be anything real specific, but we are going to talk about what... we're going to talk about citizen engagement in government and how they portray it on the show, how the White House is portrayed in the show, and we're going to have some folks there who are former White House staffers that are going to talk to us kind of after the show and talk about what was correct, what wasn't, and what was like when they worked there in the White House. Should be really entertaining. Plus, hey, there's a Ferris wheel and there's food and stuff. So more details about that coming soon. So stay tuned. Check this out on Facebook. It's on our website as well. Let's fix this OK.org. Thanks, everybody. Have a great afternoon, and we'll see you tomorrow.